A man stands at a misted window. He is only a shape against the lamplight, a pair of shoulders and the slow turn of one hand. In that hand, something small and silver catches a single street lamp and lets it go again. Outside, the rain has been falling for so long that the city has begun to keep time by it. They say the wall that keeps a person from the world is built of bricks. He would learn, too late, that his was built of something quieter. Your wall, perhaps, is not external. Perhaps it is an internal code, designed along a simulated path. And perhaps, until you read it in your own hand, you will not understand why the season will not end. A close hand, a thumb on a small steel wheel, a flint, a click, a spark, small and brief and orange. And then, nothing. No flame, only the spark, blooming once and gone, against a blur of rain on glass. Some seasons do not end. Some doors are not locked from the outside. October of 1993, London. A side street off Brick Lane. In the part of Spitalfields where the brick is still soot dark from a century of weather. It has been raining, in one form or another, since the last week of September. The recession that began with Black Wednesday a year before has not loosened its grip. Shop fronts wear hand-lettered signs that read, with unembarrassed honesty, sale, closing, and reduced. Halfway down the street, a small green-painted sign hangs above a single ground-floor window. Reed & Son Leather Goods. Through the misted glass, a warm interior glow leans out into the wet evening like a person trying not to be impolite. London rain and the season that cannot end. A porch light story. Inside, the air is the air of a working room. The smell of beeswax and edge paint and vegetable-tanned leather. A workbench scarred by 40 years of use. A row of awls and bone folders and round knives kept in a wooden tray as carefully as cutlery in a careful house. At the workbench stands a man of 56. James Reed. Iron gray hair, a trimmed gray beard, reading glasses pushed up into his hair. A dark olive wool waistcoat over a faded blue Oxford shirt. A leather apron with brass eyelets. Hands stained brown from edge paint, and a small white scar across the back of his right thumb where, years ago, an awl slipped while he was thinking of something else. He is hand-stitching a strap. The metronome of his work is the awl, the needle, the wax thread, the awl again. The radio, on the high shelf, has been murmuring a BBC report on unemployment figures. He reaches up without looking and switches it off. The silence afterwards is louder than the radio had been. A bell above the door. The cold, wet street comes in for a moment and then is shut out again. Mrs. Patel from the newsagent 2 doors down, sturdy in a dark cardigan over a navy salwar kameez, a knitted shawl over her hair against the rain, a paper bag in one hand.
James, I had spare, so do not argue. They will only go cold. Eat the smaller one first. The bigger one needs warming. And do not tell me you have already eaten, because I have known you for 22 years, and you only say that on the days you have not. Eat your samosa, James. The street is short of stubborn men. We can spare neither of us.
He answers, in his dry baritone, that she brings him orders, samosas, weather reports, the price of cooking oil, and that by all rights she ought to charge him, and that they both know she will not, and that they both know he would not, in any case, be in a position to pay. She sets the bag on the corner of the workbench, away from the leather. He nods his thanks and goes on stitching for one more line, because to stop in the middle of a stitch is, in his trade, a small kind of betrayal. When he reaches up to the high shelf for the spool of waxed thread, the cuff of his shirt brushes a small object beside the tin biscuit box. There is a faint, metallic chime, almost too soft to hear. A tarnished silver lighter, rocked back on its base, settling. She asks him in her mild, teasing tone whether he still does not smoke after all these years. He answers in his quiet baritone that he has not in 30 years, that he keeps the lighter as a paperweight, that the leather catches a draft sometimes, and the lighter holds the page down, and that this is the long and the short of it. She looks at the lighter for a moment longer than the joke required. Then she looks at him. Then she does what good neighbors have always done on streets like this. She lets a thing rest, and she goes back into the rain. Late afternoon. The wall telephone, beige plastic, rotary dial worn pale where his thumb has touched it for 20 years. It rings twice, then a third time. He lifts the receiver. The line is the line of an early 1990s transatlantic call, with its faint hiss and the tiny hollow under each word.
Dad, it's me. Can you hear me? Toronto's snow now. Proper snow. The kind that makes the street lamps look like candles. How is the weather there? How is the workshop? Dad, is it still all right? You do not have to answer if you do not want to. I worry sometimes.
I can hear you, Daniel. It rains, son, that's about all it does. Has done since the end of September. The cobbles, the gutters, the awnings, all of it sopping. The kettle has not been off the ring all week. The workshop is what it is. Steady enough for a Tuesday afternoon. The fax has been quieter than I should like. The post has been politer than I should like. But the leather is still leather, and the awl still cuts, and the radio still murmurs unemployment figures at me until I switch it off. Now then, tell me about your snow. The dry kind or the wet kind. The boys at the hardware shop when I was your age used to argue about which was worse. I never had an opinion. I would like one now.
They speak for another 4 minutes about the weather in two cities. Then they say what they are able to say to each other, which is less than either of them would like, and they put the phone down. James stands beside the receiver for a long moment after the line goes dead. Above his shoulder, on the workshop shelf, a framed photograph from 1986 shows a younger version of himself with a sandy-haired boy of 19 on a Norfolk beach. Both of them are squinting into the wind. Late evening, he locks the workshop door. He climbs the narrow stair to a small flat above. A kettle in his hand, a bare bulb on the landing, rain on the skylight, the steady kind that has lost its hurry. At the half landing he stops. He lets his free hand rest, briefly, on the cupboard door. He does not open it. Inside, on a high shelf, sits a tin biscuit box with a faded floral lid, and the man who taught him to skive a strap had once put a small thing in that box and given it to him. On a Sunday in autumn, in a saddler's shop in Lavenham, Suffolk, when he was 12 years old. He does not open the cupboard. He carries the kettle on up. He believed his wall was the world. He had not yet understood that it was a code he had written in his own hand. Years later, he would learn what it said. Tonight, he only filled the kettle. A gray week. The rain begins to feel like a tenant who has stopped paying but cannot be evicted. 3 faxes arrive, each more polite than the last. a wholesaler in Nottingham, a boutique in Marylebone, a regional buyer who used to send a Christmas card. He folds them and lays them on the corner of the workbench. The sound of the fax machine has begun to feel in his chest, the way the sound of a slow bell once felt in his school assembly hall, when boys waited to hear which of them would be sent home. He opens the ledger. The entries for October are written in red ink, because the bottle of black ink ran dry a fortnight ago, and the small stationer on Commercial Street is shut on Wednesdays, and somehow, for 3 Wednesdays running, he has not remembered to go on a different day. He tells himself this is an oversight. He knows it is not. He has reduced himself to 1 meal a day. He calls this tidiness. Tidiness, not poverty. Tidiness. The rain changes only in volume. The neighbor's lights, in the windows opposite, come on earlier each evening and go off later each morning, as if the whole street has agreed, without speaking, to use less of itself. That afternoon, his hands sit on the workbench for a full 10 minutes without picking anything up. They wait the way 2 old laborers wait at the end of a shift. The sound of a man going on, when no one has asked him to go on, is one of the quietest sounds a city ever makes. And then, because he has been a craftsman for 40 years, his hands pick up the awl, and they begin again. Friday afternoon. A long white envelope under the door, with the landlord's letterhead in green. James reads it standing at the workbench, in his apron, with his glasses pushed down onto his nose for once. From the 1st of January, the rent on the ground floor and flat above will rise by 22%. If he is not in a position to accept the increase, he is asked, with regret, to vacate the premises by the 31st of December. He reads it twice. He folds it. He carries it to the high shelf because drawers are where things go to be forgotten, and this is not a thing he is permitted to forget. He places it on the shelf, and on top of it, almost as if to weigh it down, he lays the tarnished silver lighter. A man who has spent his life making things that hold other things in place is sometimes surprised to find, late in the day, that he himself is the thing being held down. That afternoon, for no reason he can name, James takes a small offcut of mid-tan leather. He measures, he cuts. He carves an oak leaf into one corner with a small stamp his grandfather once carried in a tobacco tin. He burnishes the edge until the leather glows the color of dark honey. A bookmark, single small bookmark with an oak leaf in one corner. No customer, no order slip, no name in the ledger. When it is finished, he carries it to the front window of the workshop and lays it on the inside of the sill. He cannot quite say why. Perhaps because the letter is upstairs on the shelf, weighed down by a lighter that has not lit anything in 30 years, and the small leaf is, for the moment, the only argument he has. He stands at the window for a moment, looking out at the rain. None of the passers-by look in. He had not expected them to. And yet there was a small movement in his chest when each of them passed that he had not felt in 3 years, and that he did not, when it came, know what to do with. Even men who have decided to stop sometimes leave one last sign on the door, and sometimes the sign is for a stranger they have not yet met. The next morning, Mrs. Patel walks past the workshop window on her way to open the newsagent. She stops. She stands for a long moment with her shawl gathered at her throat and looks at the small leather bookmark in the window, the oak leaf in its corner. She does not go inside. She does not knock. She puts her hand into her cardigan and draws out a folded flyer she had been given at the church hall on Hanbury Street. Spitalfields hands. A community exhibition. Makers welcome. She folds it back into her pocket and walks on through the rain. That night, at the small kitchen table in the flat above, James lays out the things a man lays out when he is preparing to make a decision he does not want to admit he is making. The ledger, the calculator with the missing rubber foot, 3 opened envelopes, a glass of tap water he has poured because he felt he ought to want one. He sharpens his pencil with a small penknife. He works through the figures. He works through them again, in case the second pass is kinder than the first. It is not. The arithmetic of December and January is, in the end, only the arithmetic of December and January. He has, at most, 11 weeks. He takes a clean sheet of writing paper from the drawer. He writes, in his careful tradesman's hand, the 4 words, "Daniel, I have decided to," and then he stops. He looks at the words. He draws a single line through them. He folds the paper in half and slides it under the calculator, where he will not see it when he comes down for breakfast. He does not drink the water. The rain outside against the dark kitchen window picks up a degree. He says, almost to himself, the single word "tomorrow," and then a second time, "tomorrow," like a man rehearsing a small, reluctant promise. There are men who say tomorrow when what they mean is, please, not today. And there are men who say tomorrow when they are simply tired. He could not, that night, have told you which kind of man he was. He goes to the small bedroom at the back of the flat. He sits on the edge of the bed without taking off his shoes. From the bedside drawer, he takes out the framed photograph he keeps face down, because keeping it face up has, in 3 years, never once made the morning easier. His wife in 1979 on a beach in Brittany, laughing at something he had said. He does not remember the joke. He has not remembered it for at least a decade. He looks at the photograph for a long minute and puts it back. He lies down without pulling back the blanket. He listens to the rain. He thinks, as he thinks most nights, of the small list of things he has not yet been brave enough to do. That night, in the dark, a single thought arrived without invitation. He could not have known it was the last thought he would think before everything changed. 9:47 the following evening. He is at the workbench, putting tools away in the order he has put them away every working night since 1971. The shop has been closed for an hour. The rain on the front window is the steady wet curtain of a season that has forgotten itself. 3 knocks at the door. Firm, polite, a stranger's knocks. He freezes, the way a man freezes who has just begun to think his evening would contain nothing else. A pause, and then a 4th knock, softer than the first 3, almost apologetic, as if the knocker had reconsidered her right to be there. He goes to the door. Through the rain-streaked glass, the outline of a young woman, her shoulders drawn up against the weather, a folder pressed flat to her chest under a transparent plastic poncho. Behind her, the haloed glow of a sodium street lamp, every drop of rain catching it once and letting it go. He calls out, just a moment, the way a man calls out who needs the small phrase to steady his own hand on the lock. He turns the key. He has not, in 3 years, opened that door after closing for anyone he did not already know. She is 28, perhaps 29. honey brown hair in a loose plait fallen dark with rain, hazel eyes, a mustard yellow oversized cardigan, almost black where it is soaked through. The folder is held against her chest the way a person holds a thing they have walked a long way to deliver.
I'm sorry, sir. I know it's late. My name is Ella Whitfield. I've been walking up and down this street for, 20 minutes, looking for the man who made the bookmark in the window. I came past this morning, you see, and I went home. And I came back because I could not, in the end, walk away from a thing like that without saying something. I am the volunteer coordinator of a small project called Spitalfields Hands. We're putting on an exhibition in 3 weeks in the Methodist Church Hall on Henry Street. No fee, no commission, just makers. Just makers showing what they have made. I would like very much for you to be one of them.
He answers, with the careful slowness of a man who has not had a stranger in his shop after closing for years, that he made the bookmark yesterday, that there is no name on it, no price, that he did not, in the proper sense, make it for anyone. He stands aside, because there is nothing else a man of his upbringing can do when a young woman is dripping rainwater onto the pavement at his door. She steps in, takes the poncho off, folds it into a square the size of a paperback, and lays the folder on the corner of the workbench beside the awls. He says in his careful baritone that he is not the sort of maker who exhibits. He makes wallets, belts, school satchels for children whose mothers cannot afford a new one. He mends things. The room she is putting together, he is sure it's a fine room. He is not, by any honest measure, what she is looking for.
Yes, Mr. Reed, that is exactly the sort of maker I want. The wallets and the belts and the school satchels for the children whose mothers cannot afford a new one. Especially the satchels, especially the mended things. The room I am putting together is for the people who mend. Now, I would not say no to a cup of tea if you were thinking of offering one. Milk, no sugar.
He puts the kettle on the small electric ring at the back of the workshop. While the water heats, she stands at the window where the bookmark still rests on the inside of the sill. She does not pick it up. She looks at the oak leaf the way she might look at a sentence in a book.
Mr. Reed, your hands are not for sale. They are for memory. How many of these have you made? For someone who will remember you.
He stops, with the kettle in his hand. He does not turn around at first. The kettle goes on humming. After a long moment, he says, in a voice almost too quiet for the room, that he has not counted. Not because there are too many, because there are not enough. He has, in fact, never been asked the question before. He pours the tea. He sets the mug down beside her folder. He does not look at her face, because the question is sitting on the workbench between them, like a third person who has just walked in out of the rain.
I'm leaving the folder here. There is a sheet inside with the dates, and a sheet with the names of the makers who have already said yes. You don't have to decide tonight. You don't have to decide tomorrow. But I'd be very glad if you were one of us. And as for why this street, in case you are going to ask, it is because somebody on this street put an oak leaf in a window in a week when nobody was buying anything. I think that is a person who ought to be in a room with other people who have done the same. That is the whole of it.
She drinks the tea standing up because she is too wet to sit on his good chair. She thanks him. She unfolds the small square of poncho, drapes it over her shoulders, and steps back into the rain. The bell above the door rings once. The door closes. James stands at the workbench for a long while, with the folder in front of him and the questions still in the room. "3 weeks. The rain turns from an autumn rain into the first long pre-winter rain, colder and somehow more patient. James prepares 12 pieces, 6 bookmarks, a journal cover with an oak leaf at the spine, a mended satchel, a child's belt, 2 card wallets, a pair of glasses cases, 1 small leather pouch he cannot quite explain even to himself. He works longer hours than he has worked in years. He eats slightly more than 1 meal a day. He notices with some surprise that his hands ache less when there is a reason for them to ache. But what he could not have known in those 3 small, bright weeks of work was that the man who would soon walk in through that door was not the patron the world was finally sending him. He was the cost of receiving the wrong kind of help. On a Tuesday afternoon, 10 days before the exhibition, the bell above the door rings, and a man steps in whom James has not seen in 15 years. Edmund Hollister, 61. Pinstripe charcoal 3-piece suit, silver white hair combed back, a neat mustache, a heavy gold signet ring on his little finger, a black umbrella furled and dripping onto the linoleum. The same Edmund, only older.
James. My word, James Reed. Look at you. Still standing. Still at the same workbench. Still the same little green sign over the door. A little bird at the council told me. Something about an exhibition in the Methodist church hall. Spitalfields' hands, I thought. Well, I thought I had to come and see for myself. Old time's sake. Old loyalties. You know how I am about old loyalties. 15 years it has been, James. You are looking the way a man looks who has not quite given up. That is a compliment in my book.
Edmund. The umbrella is dripping on the linoleum, mind. There is a tray under the workbench if you would care for it. As for not quite giving up, I shall take it for the compliment you intended. There has not been an abundance of those lately on this stretch of street.
Edmund moves through the workshop the way a buyer moves through a sale room. He picks up the journal cover. He weighs it. He sets it down. He runs the pad of his thumb along the burnished edge of one of the bookmarks. He nods, slowly, the way a man nods who has decided, in advance, what kind of nod the room requires.
James, I'd like to be a patron. A modest one, of course. A name on the program. A small sum to cover your printing. A glass of something decent on the night. We can discuss the details. I've always thought your work has a certain dignity. We shall make a small evening of it. You shall stand behind your table. I shall stand near the door. The two together. Most agreeable. I'm sure, James, I'm sure.
James, who is tired, who has been working 16 hours a day, who has not slept properly in a fortnight, who has read the landlord's letter every night for company, hears the word patron and the word dignity, and his shoulders against his own caution drop half an inch. He says, in the quiet baritone of a man who has decided to accept what looks, in this lamplight, very like kindness, that if Edmund is sure, then thank you, and that the small evening will be most agreeable indeed. There's a kind of softness that is the sound of being cared for, and there's a kind of softness that is the sound of a verdict being lowered onto a man too tired to look up. He could not, that afternoon, tell the difference between the two. The Methodist church hall on Hanbury Street. Folding chairs, a long trestle table, mismatched lamps, tall arched windows behind which the rain falls in straight silver lines under the street lamps. 20-odd makers, 100 or so visitors, the smell of a tea urn and of damp wool coats. James stands behind a small corner of the table allotted to him. His 12 pieces are laid out with the careful spacing he uses on his workbench. Ella moves through the room in a long indigo skirt and a cream blouse. She brings strangers to him. An elderly man with a cane, a woman asking after the child's belt for her grandson, a retired teacher in a green tweed coat who buys nothing, but stands and looks at the bookmarks for a very long time. Ella brings to him an elderly woman in a green tweed coat, introduces her as Mrs. Albright, and presents him in the same breath as the man who made the oak leaf the visitor has been holding for nearly an hour.
Mr. Reed. I had a brother once. Tom was his name. He used to bring me oak leaves home from the park every Saturday in the autumn, pressed flat in his school cap. I had not thought of him in 27 years until I picked up this little thing and turned it over in my hand. I do not know how you knew Mr. Reed. I do not know how a stranger ever knows.
I did not know, ma'am. I only knew the leaf. Perhaps that is how it works in the end. Perhaps the leaf knew and waited, and your brother Tom on a Saturday afternoon in 1960-something put one in your hand once, so that tonight in October you would put one back in your own. The trade is older than I am, Mrs. Albright. I am only the man with the awl.
She buys the bookmark for £2.50. James writes, on the back of a small folded slip of paper, the date and her name. He gives it to her without ceremony. She walks away holding the bookmark in front of her, like a candle. The second woman later weeps over a bookmark embossed with the letter A. She does not say why. At one point in the evening, James, behind the trestle table, is asked a small question by a stranger about how he hand burnishes the edge of a piece of vegetable tanned leather. He answers. He hears, after a few sentences, his own voice going on, and, almost, he smiles. Not quite. Almost. It was the closest thing to a smile he had worn in 3 years. And as the rain on the tall arched windows would later remember, it was the last one he would wear that night. 9:30. The crowd is thinning. James is wiping a smudge from the journal cover when Edmund Hollister appears at his elbow, smelling faintly of pipe tobacco in the cold. Edmund touches his elbow and says, "James, a word." He leads him to the small alcove by the cloakroom, where the coats hang on a curtained rail and the floor is damp. He puts a hand briefly on James's shoulder, the way a man does who has decided in advance that the touch will be the last courtesy of the conversation.
James, I have been thinking, all evening in fact, these pieces of yours, they are very personal, sentimental, James, sentimental. The board at Hollister and Bream, you understand, they have a certain idea of what we put our name to. I cannot, in good conscience, lend my name to something quite this personal. I think it's best, do you not, that we draw a line tonight. Discreetly. No fuss. Sentiment is not, you understand, the same as sentiment that sells. The board would never. I'm sure you can see that.
James says, very quietly, the single phrase, a line, And then the man's name, Edmund. He says he sees it. He says he has always seen it. The board, the names, the small evenings. He had not, until tonight, understood that he was, in the end, one of them. One of the things to be considered. One of the things to be drawn a line beneath. That is all. He lifts down a charcoal overcoat with a velvet collar and folds it over his arm. He pauses, briefly, and looks at James with what is almost, but is not quite, regret. He says he will be in touch about the printing, that there is no need for a refund, and good night. The door swings shut behind him. He goes. The door at the far end of the hall swings shut behind him. James is left standing beside the cloakroom, with 2 empty wine glasses in his hands he had been about to take to the small kitchen at the back. He cannot, for a long moment, work out how the wine glasses got there. He sets them down on the windowsill, very carefully, as if they were the only fragile things left in the room. There are humiliations that arrive with shouting, and there are humiliations that arrive in a soft voice with a hand on the shoulder. The second kind, in his experience, took longer to leave the body. After the hall is empty, after the chairs are stacked and the tea urn drained and the lamps unplugged one by one, James buttons his coat at the door. He steps out into the porch, where the rain sheets off the stone eaves in 2 thin curtains, left and right, with a still gap between them just wide enough for one person to stand in. Ella is already there. The transparent poncho is on, her plaid dark again. She does not turn at his footstep. She speaks without looking up.
He never saw it, James. That doesn't mean it wasn't seen. They asked me, all of them who made the oak leaf. I said you did. I said I would tell you they had asked. They went home in the rain, Mr. Reed, the way I will go home in the rain in a moment, and they took the small thing you made with them. He did not see that. It does not mean it was not seen.
She holds out a small folded slip of paper, the kind they had been using all night to tag pieces. He takes it. 3 names, 3 telephone numbers, written in her careful art student's hand, the 2 women who wept. A 3rd visitor he does not remember meeting.
Thank you, Ella. I will keep the slip, and I will keep the names. Whatever else this season takes from me, those 3 names I will keep. Good night, Ella. Mind the rain.
She nods. She steps out of the porch into the rain. She does not look back. He folds the slip of paper, very small, and puts it into the inside pocket of his coat, against his chest. He walks home alone through the heaviest rain of the season. The streets reflect every lamp twice, once on the cobble, once in the standing water. The brick of the houses has gone almost black. He passes Mrs. Patel's newsagent, shut, the small striped awning weeping at its corners. When he reaches the workshop, he does not turn on the main light. He turns on only the desk lamp at the workbench. He hangs his coat on the hook by the door. He stands in the center of the room and listens to the rain on the front window. He thinks, for a long time, of nothing at all. And then he thinks of the cupboard. The cupboard above the high shelf. The one he has not opened in more than 30 years. The one above which, on a separate small shelf, the tarnished silver lighter has lived, holding down a folded landlord's letter, holding down, perhaps, a great many things. He fetches the small wooden stepladder from beside the radiator. He sets it under the cupboard. He climbs 3 rungs. He puts his hand on the wooden door. What he was about to find had been waiting for him since the autumn of 1949. 44 years had passed. The cupboard held its breath. He opens the cupboard. Inside, the round tin biscuit box, pale blue with a faded floral lid. He lifts it down. It is heavier than he remembers, although he knows it cannot be. He sets it on the workbench, in the small pool of light from the lamp. He takes off his glasses to wipe them on his sleeve. He puts them back on. He lifts the lid. Inside, on a folded square of yellowed waxed paper, the tarnished silver petrol lighter. He had taken it down once, 30 years ago, and put it back, and never lifted it again. The etched lettering on the base is still legible. WR 1944. Beneath the lighter, beneath the waxed paper, a single folded sheet of paper, gone the color of weak tea. He had not, in any conscious memory, known it was there. He unfolds it. The crease is sharp. The hand is the slanted, careful, slightly old-fashioned hand of a man writing for a child. The ink is brown. The paper at one corner has a faint smear that might once have been beeswax.
James, when you have your own bench and your own hands, make me a small thing for the harvest fair. A promise. A promise is a thing kept by hand. Grandad. A Lavenham. Autumn 1949.
He reads it again in his head because the first reading went past him too quickly. His voice is cracked on the word kept before he understood it had cracked. And in the small pool of lamplight on the workbench in October of 1993, a different October opens behind his eyes. Lavenham, Suffolk, 1949. A saddler's shop with one narrow window, the autumn light coming through it the color of strong cider, a boy of 12 standing at a bench too tall for him, his sleeves rolled up to his thin elbows. Behind him, a tall, stooped man with a white mustache and a threadbare tweed jacket, one lined hand resting lightly on the boy's shoulder.
Steady now, lad. The leather will tell you. A promise is a thing kept by hand. And if you forget, lad, the leather will remember for you. That is the whole of the trade. That is the whole of any trade worth having.
The boy nods. The grandfather smiles briefly into the back of the boy's head. The boy will not remember the sentence in his waking mind for another 44 years. The grandfather will be dead by the following spring. Back in the workshop, James lifts the silver lighter from the wax paper. He turns it once in his palm. It is cold. He flicks the small steel wheel with his thumb, the way he has not flicked it in 3 decades. A flint, a click, a spark. No flame. The wick is 44 years dry. There is only the spark, brief and orange, and then nothing.
All this time I was keeping it, every stitch, every awl, every burnished edge, every small thing made by hand. I had not understood that the promise was not waiting to be made. It had been made already. It had been kept already. By me. By these hands. Grandad, you old fox, you wrote it 44 years ago and you let me find it tonight, on a night when I was just about to put the key in the lock for the last time. You waited. You let the lighter sit on the shelf for 30 years. You let the box sit beside it. You let me forget the both of you on purpose, until forgetting was the wrong direction. And then you let the rain bring me home. I see you now, Granddad. I see what you did. I see what the hands were always for.
He had been at a workbench. He had had his own hands. He had, without ever once thinking of it in those words, made small things by hand every working day for 40 years. The promise his grandfather had set down in front of him at 12 in slanted brown ink had been kept quietly in 100,000 stitches and 1,000 bookmarks and 1,000 mended satchels, kept and not noticed and kept again. What Edmund Hollister had called too personal, what Edmund Hollister had called sentimental, had been, all along, the only thing his work had ever been for. The next morning, the rain has not stopped. It has changed only in color, from the slate blue of the night to the pale gray wash of a late autumn dawn. The street lamps are still lit at 7:30, because the city has not yet decided whether the day has begun. James opens the workshop. He turns on only the desk lamp. He carries the silver lighter to the front window of the shop. He places it on the windowsill, on the inside, where the rain runs down the glass in slow ribbons on the other side. He does not refill it. He does not polish it. He simply leaves it there, where any customer who walks in will see it and not know what it means. Then he opens the cupboard above the high shelf one more time. He takes the folded note. He pins it with a small brass tack to the inside of the cupboard door, where only he will see it when he reaches for waxed thread or a fresh stamp. He closes the door. At 9 o'clock, Mrs. Patel comes through the door. She is carrying 2 enamel mugs of milky tea, one in each hand. She does not say where she has heard about the night before. She does not say whether she has heard. She sets one mug down on the workbench in front of him, and she takes the other to the small wooden stool by the window.
James, the milk is fresh, the tea is too strong. I made it the way you like it because today is not a day for weak tea. Drink. Don't look at me like that. I came in for the warmth. That is the official reason. The newsagent is cold today. My husband forgot to leave the heater on. He forgets a great many things lately. It is not a tragedy, James. It is only a list. Every old man in the borough has one. And before you ask, no, I shall not be asking about last night, or the night before, or the lighter on the windowsill, which I see and which I have, in fact, been looking at for the last 2 minutes. We shall sit, we shall drink, and I shall be on my way.
They drink their tea. They speak about the price of milk, and about the pigeon that has been roosting under the awning of her shop, and about the kettle she has been promising her husband she will replace since the summer. They do not speak about the church hall. They do not speak about Edmund Hollister. They do not speak about the lighter on the windowsill, although she sees it, and although she understands, in the way Mrs. Patel understands most things, that something has shifted in the room without her being told. She finishes her tea. She rinses both mugs at the small sink at the back. She puts on her shawl. She pauses at the door. She asks in the way she has asked every working morning of the last 22 years whether he will be open tomorrow. The street will want to know. She will be asked twice before noon. by people who pretend not to care.
Open tomorrow, Mrs. Patel. Tell them the door will be unlocked at 8:30, the way it has been unlocked at 8:30 since 1971. Tell them the kettle is full. Tell them the leather is dry, the awl is sharp, the bone folder is where it has been since the Queen was crowned, and the small green sign over the door has not yet, in 22 years of continuous rain, fallen down. Tell the pigeon too, if you will, that the awning is no warmer than yesterday, and there will be no improvement on its accommodations. And tell yourself, Mrs. Patel, tell yourself a thank you from me for the milky tea made too strong on a morning that needed it.
The bell above the door rings once. She is gone. Mid-morning, the wall telephone rings. He lifts it. The line today is clearer. Or perhaps he is only listening more carefully.
Dad, it's me. How are you, Dad? You sound a little different today. I'm not sure what it is. The line, maybe. Or maybe not the line.
Daniel, I found a note last night from your great-grandfather, from Walter. He had written it to me. He had written it when I was 12. I had forgotten it was there. 44 years it has been sitting in a tin box on a shelf above my workbench, and last night, for reasons I could not have explained even to myself, I climbed up and brought it down. He asked me to make him a small thing for the harvest fair. He said a promise was a thing kept by hand. That was all. 9 words and the date. Lavenham, autumn 1949. I read it twice last night, and I have read it 3 more times this morning, and each time it sounds a little less like my grandfather, and a little more like a thing I had been telling myself all along, in a voice I did not recognize as my own. I think, son, your great-grandfather was the patient kind, the kind who plants a sentence in a boy's tin box and lets it sit there for 44 years, until the boy, who is now an old man, finally has the right kind of bad evening to find it. I shall pin the note inside the cupboard door this afternoon. I shall not show it to anyone, I am telling you, on the line, because you are the only one I have left who would understand, in your bones, what it means.
There is, on the line, the small wet sound of a son in a small flat in a city of snow, drawing a breath he had not meant to draw. There is a long pause on the line, long enough that James for a moment wonders if the connection has dropped. It has not. Daniel is, on the other end, in a small flat in a city of snow, simply not yet able to find his voice.
Dad, I'd like to come for Christmas. If you'd have me, I can take leave from Boxing Day. I'll bring the snow with me, the proper kind, on the soles of my boots. The spare bed upstairs, is it still there? Is it still made up? Or do I write that on the list?
He says, simply, that the bed is there, that it has been there since Daniel was 19, and that he will, before the boy arrives, change the sheets to the white ones with the small green stitching that his wife had bought in the summer of 1987, and that he has, all this time, been keeping for the occasion he had not, until tonight, believed would come. That is all that is said. They speak for another few sentences about flights and dates, and whether the spare bed upstairs will need new sheets. They put the phone down. James stands beside the receiver for a long moment, the way he had stood the week before. But the standing, this time, is not the same standing. That afternoon, a letter arrives in the second post, a handwritten request on a small sheet of pale blue paper from a woman who had been at the church hall. Could he, she asked, make her a journal cover with an oak leaf at the spine for her mother, who was forgetting? The woman wished, while her mother could still hold a thing in her hand, to give her a thing made by hand, a thing she could keep. James reads the letter twice. He folds it. He walks to the small stationer on Commercial Street, even though it is a Wednesday, and discovers, when he arrives, that the stationer is in fact open on Wednesdays and has been since 1987. He buys a bottle of black ink. That evening at the workbench, he opens the ledger. He uncaps the new bottle. The smell of fresh black ink rises into the workshop air, the way the smell of a clean fire rises in a cold room. He dips the nib. He holds the pen above the page for the length of one breath, the way a man holds a small ceremonial thing before he uses it. Then he writes the name of the woman, the name of her mother, the dimensions, the price, the date by which he has promised it. He does not, this time, write the entry in red. The rain in London did not stop that week. It did not stop the week after. It did not stop properly until well into the new year, by which time James Reed had taken on 5 small commissions, mended 14 satchels, lit the heater every morning at 7:30, and made 11 more bookmarks with 11 different small emblems for 11 different people whose names he had begun to write down. He did not become, in the months that followed, a man who belonged again to the world. The world had moved on without him in some of the ways the world does, and some of those ways were beyond his power to repair. He became instead something quieter. He became a man who had remembered who his hands were for. Some seasons perhaps are not meant to end. Some rains perhaps are not weather but witness. They fall on a man until he finally stops and listens and reads what has been written all along in his own hand. The wall he had thought was the world had been, all along, an internal code designed along a simulated path, a code he had written in his own hand. And now at last, in the lamplight of a workshop on a side street off Brick Lane, in October of 1993, he had read what it said. It said simply this: a promise is a thing kept by hand. For everyone whose season has gone on too long, and who, even so, kept making the small thing by hand. A Porch Light Story.